You've been saving money for years. Not a little, a real amount. Maybe $15,000. Maybe $30,000. Sitting in your bank account, untouched, growing slowly. And every time someone brings up investing, you think, yeah, I'll get to that soon. When things settle down. When I feel more confident. When I know enough. But here's the thing nobody tells you about that decision. Doing nothing is still a decision. And like every financial decision, it has a cost. A very specific, very calculable cost. And once you see the actual number, what doing nothing costs you over 10, 20, 30 years, it's genuinely hard to unsee. If you have money sitting in savings that you haven't invested yet, this video is for you. Hit subscribe and give this a thumbs up if it helps. Let's start with something most people get wrong. They think not investing is the safe option. It feels safe. Your balance doesn't drop. You don't have to watch charts. You don't have to make decisions. The money just sits there, quiet and stable, and that feels responsible. But here's what most people don't realize. Stability isn't the same as safety. And sitting still in a financial system built on inflation is not neutral. It's losing ground. Slowly, quietly, every single year. Let's look at the math. The average inflation rate over the last several decades has hovered around 3% per year. That means every year, the purchasing power of your money shrinks by roughly 3%. A dollar today buys what 97 cents bought last year. Now apply that to real money. Say you have $20,000 sitting in a standard savings account earning 0.5% interest. After 1 year, your balance reads $20,100. Looks fine. But in real purchasing power, after 3% inflation, that $20,100 is worth about $19,497 in today's terms. You didn't lose money on paper. But you lost purchasing power. And that happens every single year you wait. Over 10 years, that $20,000 in a 0.5% savings account becomes about $21,020 in nominal terms. But in real purchasing power, adjusted for inflation, it's worth closer to $15,600. You started with $20,000. A decade later, it buys what $15,600 used to buy. That's the invisible cost of not investing. Not dramatic. Not sudden. Just slow, steady erosion while you feel like nothing is happening. Now let's look at the other side. That same $20,000 invested in a broad market index fund, historically averaging around 10% annually, becomes roughly $51,874 after 10 years. Same starting money. Same decade. One decision. The gap between those two outcomes, $15,600 in real value versus $51,874, is entirely the cost of waiting. And it gets worse the longer you wait. After 20 years, the savings account gives you about $22,100 nominal, roughly $12,200 in real purchasing power. The invested $20,000 at 10% annually becomes around $134,550. After 30 years. Savings account, roughly $23,100 nominal, worth maybe $9,500 in today's purchasing power. Invested, over $348,000. Same money. Same person. 30 years of one decision separating those two outcomes entirely. This is the real cost of never investing. Not losing money in a crash. Not making a bad trade. Just quietly, slowly falling behind while your savings balance looks fine on the surface. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because most people think the danger of not investing is missing gains. And that's true. But there's a second cost that's even more damaging. And almost nobody talks about it. It's the cost of lost compounding time. Here's what compounding actually means in practice. When your money earns a return, that return gets added to your balance. Then next year, you earn a return on the bigger balance. Then the year after, on the even bigger balance. The growth feeds itself. It accelerates. But here's the brutal part. The early years are the most valuable. Not because the returns are bigger, they're actually smaller in absolute terms early on. But because those early returns have the most time to compound on top of themselves. Let's make it concrete. Imagine two people. Both invest $10,000 at 10% annually. Person A invests today. After 30 years, they have around $174,000. Person B waits just 5 years before investing the same $10,000. After 30 years from today, meaning only 25 years of actual compounding, they have around $108,000. Same amount invested. Same rate of return. 5 years of waiting costs person B $66,000. Not 5 years of returns. $66,000. Because those first 5 years weren't just earning returns. They were building the base that everything else compounded on top of. This is why financial advisors repeat the same line endlessly. Time in the market beats timing the market. It's not a cliché. It's math. So why don't people invest? If the math is this clear, why does money keep sitting in savings accounts doing nothing? 3 reasons. First, fear of losing money. The stock market goes down sometimes. People see headlines about crashes and corrections and they think, I don't want that happening to my savings. And that fear is completely understandable. But here's what the headlines don't show you. Every major market crash in history has been followed by a recovery. Every single one. The S&P 500 has never permanently stayed down. Temporary drops are real. Permanent loss from long-term broad market investing is historically almost non-existent. The risk isn't investing. The risk is the time you spend not invested. Second, waiting to know enough. A lot of people think they need to understand investing deeply before they start. They want to feel ready. But the truth is, the most effective investing strategy for most people, consistent, low-cost index funds, requires almost no expertise. You don't need to pick stocks. You need to start and keep going. Third, it never feels urgent. This is the most dangerous one. Because the cost of not investing doesn't show up immediately. Your savings balance looks fine today. It looks fine next month. It looks fine next year. The damage accumulates silently over decades, and by the time it's obvious, the most valuable compounding years are already gone. Urgency that doesn't feel urgent is the hardest kind to act on. So what actually happens to your money if you never invest it? It survives. It doesn't disappear overnight. It just slowly, steadily loses its ability to do things for you. The $30,000 that could have become $300,000 stays at $34,000. The retirement that could have been comfortable stays out of reach. The financial options that could have opened up never appear. Not because of a bad decision. Because of no decision at all. Here's the summary. Not investing isn't neutral. It's a choice with a real cost, inflation erosion every year, lost compounding on every dollar, and lost time that can never be recovered. The money doesn't vanish. It just quietly fails to become what it could have been. The people who build real wealth over time aren't necessarily smarter or luckier. Most of them just started. Not perfectly. Not with a lot. Just started, kept going, and let time do the heavy lifting. That option is still available to you. But it gets a little more expensive every month you wait. If this video changed how you think about your savings, hit subscribe. And I want to know, do you have money sitting uninvested right now? What's been stopping you? Let me know in the comments.